Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy, Pastor Ramon, aka Pastor Ray, and this is an exclusive well encounter just for you all. We normally haven't had one of these, but we're excited because today we have a very special person with us. But I'm not going to do too much introducing. I'm going to let my man Brendan do that in a second. You guys know our other two panelists, both my boy 3J. Say what's up to the people, 3J.
What's up? It's the rapping minister 3J, Jehovah God, Jesus Christ, and justice. Without the three, we can't be free. What's popping, everybody?
That's right. And of course, the wonderful and talented Brennan B. Why don't you let the people know what you're doing and how you're on, brother?
Y'all know what time it is. Black at it again, black at it to win, man. We out here and we got a dope conversation for today. Dope conversation for today.
That's it. That's it. So listen, you guys know everything about the well. So if you are, and I get in trouble when I don't say this. So of course, right, there's some things I want to just get out of the way. We know that we encounter the well, we become the well, we emerge and share the well. It's synonymous with encounter Jesus, become like Jesus, emerge and share Jesus. Encounter love, become like love, emerge and share love. Whatever other words you want to put it in, make it your own, but make it positive and make it right. The next thing is we got the path. Everything we do should lead you down the path to the 5 Ps. And 3J, you always know I'm calling you for those 5 Ps, brother. What are those 5 Ps?
How can you do it this time, man? Why can't you just take it for the 5 Ps? We have power, we have passion, we have purpose, we have promise, and we have peace.
Hey, man, listen, that's it, man. We do it enough that we know it by now. So everything we do should lead you down the path to those 5 Ps. Listen, I'm not going to belabor this moment. I'm going to turn it over to the awesome Brendan B to go ahead and do an introduction of our guest panelists this evening, brother.
What's up, family? Yo, this has been a long time coming. We worked on this a lot. This is my guy, but we made it happen. Thank God we have made it here. Yes, everybody say amen. I'm gonna get my preaching voice on for that one. It's been a long time coming. Man, this is my guy, my guy, my high school. Like, he was a senior, I was a junior. He was a year ahead of me in high school, man. We both participated in the IB program, and on some real, I actually just told him right before this, like, dude inspired me way back in high school with a paper that he wrote on the word nigga. And so, like, when we were discussing this topic, understanding where it came from, why it's a part of our culture, all of that. Like, I just didn't feel right having the conversation without tapping in with my guy. Dude is very talented. 3J, he an MC as well. Yeah. You know, that New York blood run, everybody got a little MC in them, but he's definitely dope. Educator as well, teaching the youth and like I said, man, dude was inspiring me in high school, so I know he's doing real dope things. But I'm not gonna take too much more time introducing him. Brandon White, can you please introduce yourself, my bro?
Hey man, Boost, thank you very much, man, for the kind words. I greatly appreciate them. 3J, it was dope to find out you were an MC as well as you were being introduced. I was like, oh, another MC on the call. That's what's up. I'm an educator, an MC, and Christ follower as well. Obviously, one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to not just sharing information, but also getting edified through the conversation. Iron sharpening iron and all that. So I'm just excited right now. I work for an organization that leads professional development for teachers to teach with more equity in mind with their content and how they approach their content. But before that, I was a middle school ELA teacher at Douglas. I worked at Douglas, Boost.
Oh man, there you go.
That's the history. You from Rochester. That's exactly what. It was funny. There was like this little YouTube clip. I forgot the name of the comedian. Somebody said his nephew was going to Northwest and Northeast College Prep. He's like, "Oh, you're going to a preparatory school? Awesome!" But then they pull up to the Douglas building. He's like, "What? This is just Douglas." Like, right. There are people who work really hard to beat that legacy, but it's you know how the district can be as products of it. So. Right. But I stopped doing that, and now I'm in this nonprofit professional development space, and part of me misses, dealing with my native community, right? Because it's a national nonprofit, but I'm also learning a lot, and it's also giving me time to sit and reflect. So, I appreciate it very much.
One more thing before we move on into the conversation, I do absolutely have to highlight that me and my bro, we were a part of, our high school being as high as, I think it was 24th in the nation.
Facts.
As far as academics, you know what I mean? So we come from a good pedigree, you feel me?
yeah. And it definitely broke a lot of stereotypes around inner city schools and like what Black and brown
Smack
kids
dab in the
can
middle
do.
of the hood.
No, for
Like,
sure.
Actually, so much so that the Boys and Girls Club across the street, like, literally had a triple homicide that made national news. Like, in the middle of the hood. Like,
right across the street. That's true. No, it's true. Yep. After like a sports event, I go get my gizzards right next door.
Gizzards in the Fago or the Arizona.
Yep.
With the hot sauce or the boss sauce. You feel me?
Yep. And
down south. That's what Southern guy.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about the New York piece, right? Like, we're what? How many miles? Like 600 miles, basically, away from New York City. Mm-hmm. So we're still very East Coast and we're still very New York, but it's not exactly like the same. Sometimes it feels more like a Detroit or a Cleveland or somewhere. I bet you, we probably have we have just as much in common with Midwest folk as we do with people, on the East Coast, like, in the 5 boroughs or whatever. It's because it's different. We're not stacked up on top of each other the way it is in New York City. It's just more spread out, and you'll definitely see some country things in Rochester for sure. For sure.
Absolutely, man. But listen, man, let's go, man. It's time.
It's time.
Let's talk about one of the most taboo words. It ain't a cuss word, but you can't use it. Like, it's like you got to be of a certain ilk to use the word, or it is a cuss word, and it'll get you cussed out and get you a lot of things. Nah, but we're talking about the word nigga. Nigga. That's the variation we use in here. We're not going. That's what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about all the variations and all that stuff that's come out and the history of it. But man, I'll be honest. This is a conversation I wanted to have. And again, bro, inspired by your paper, because it helped me to have an appreciation for the word versus the negative connotation that it has in the world. And I think that was mainly because of the origins. Like when I read your paper and everything, and that's the kind of the first thing I want you to talk about is those origins of the word. Like, where from your research did the word originate from?
No doubt. And one thing that I'll do too is like share information I found out since too, right? So, the paper that Boost is talking about, like, was like a timeline that showed the evolution of the actual word itself versus like how it was used and why it was used, right? So what the letters looked like versus how society was using it. And so essentially, European Western society, the backbone of much of their languages are 2 languages, Greek and Latin, right? Mm-hmm. Their words, they had 2 words that sound pretty similar to each other, right? And neither of them necessarily meant good things. Negro, or variations of it, which meant black or dark, and then necro, which meant death. So when they encounter these people who have darker skin or just have an abundance of melanin, and they're equating it with these things that are not necessarily good, right? There's already this negative connotation that can kind of set in around who these people are, because the words you would use to describe them often have this association with negativity, right? Mm-hmm. Especially in places in Europe where the dark is a terrifying thing, because What season is terrible in Europe? Winter. And what happens in winter? It gets really dark, right? Like plagues happen in Europe. The Black Plague happened in Europe, right? Like all these concepts around darkness were very negative, and a lot of their roots in terms of talking about darkness were either literal black or about death, necro or negro, right? So encountering these people who you're already in some competition with in terms of having power in the world, when there are decisions and choices made by, I want to say, what was his name? Zurara is his last name. There are choices, and he's a Portuguese, he was in the Portuguese royal courts. When there was choices made to be like, you know what, in order to take back power from these dark-skinned people who already kind of ruled our region, which were the Moors, which is another term that gets used, and that's a whole other conversation we could talk about with the term Moor and people who call themselves Moors. That's a whole other conversation. But in order to take back the power from these people who are Moors, who also we associate with this dark skin, we have to have a slander campaign around how inferior and barbaric these people are, even though they taught us for 700 years. But in order to get power back and have power over them, we have to share this narrative. We have to spread it across Europe and into the continent, right? So from there, the negative attitudes around these people and the language was already kind of set. But then when the slave trade actually got like rocking and rolling, you had all these European people who were, influenced by Greek and Latin languages, whether you were speaking English or speaking Portuguese or Spanish, whatever have you. And when they came here, one of the resources that I used for that paper you're talking about talked about how, like, in terms of it turning into nigger, like it was more of a spin from like Portuguese versions of that word describing dark people. It was like nigert almost. And they explained how that was like the final step before it turned into nigger. And by like the 18th century, nigger became like the official way of disrespecting and denigrating, which even that word has its root, N-I-G-R, right? Denigrating, dark-skinned peoples, right? So that's kind of how it started. But even before that, though, which is something I learned about more, Black people, like particularly in like Northeast Africa, had already been using words that sound similar to that to describe like divinity or regality, right? Like, it's now pop culture now that, refer to people as Negus or Negash or whatever. And Kendrick Lamar made that popular with that song at the end of To Pimp a Butterfly. Mm-hmm. But the word Negus was used from like, Ethiopian royalty, same with Negash. And then before that, in ancient Egypt, like there's a term called NGR, right? And it's often pronounced Ngur, like, because they didn't really have vowel sounds in their language like that. So these terminologies or these, I guess, phonological expressions of who we are actually connected, to more of our ancient roots before, Europeans had their interpretation of it. And then that interpretation ended up kind of setting the tone for our most modern experience in the world. So that's my best attempt at summarizing that.
Yeah, it was great.
Fire, bro. Like,
appreciate it.
That literally, it lays out everything. And there's so many questions that like absolutely come from that. Yo, B, some technical issues. We had to flip some things around. We got it fixed. But
we flipped it like nigga, didn't we?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we just vibing and flowing. But
I probably should have gave the the spill in the beginning. Listen, if you got kids around and you don't like them to hear the actual word,
Yeah, you might as well give
probably
them
a
away.
moment to move them out of the room because we're going to be saying the word nigger and nigga a couple of times throughout. So just, isolate one.
Just throughout. Ain't no couple times.
Listen, we're going to do this. Because of social perception, parental advisory is advised.
Rise.
The nature of the word, how we use it and its origins, we good.
Yeah.
Nah, but man, that was a very thorough history and absolutely shed some light on some understanding of where this word came from. And I think, in all from, I guess, what I read from your paper originally, and even what you've given right now, like, to me, it was like they took a word and just kind of reinterpreted it to fit what they wanted. But it, like, there was a word and a saying or, a phrase that was used like as royalty and like deity before, and then it was perverted by this European culture. And so like, so that's where I think, so let me ask you this, man, how do you feel about the use of the word nigga?
There we go. That's the question. Now we start.
Yeah. So for me personally, when I hear it, like, if you're a Black person, many of us are just like totally just like it's part of our vocabulary, it's part of our thinking, right? Like for many of us, like, we can't speak for everybody. So for me personally, I on average do not say it a whole lot. It's not something I averagely exercise. However, I'm averagely around it and I don't feel any type of way around it in my community, right? Obviously, if it's said outside of my community, I feel a way about it because I think with us, as you just noted, in some ways it's us flipping a negative language we were exposed to or tapping back into what existed before that negative spin was put, or it's an identification with being in the struggle with you, right? Like that's another unspoken way we use the word. So when I hear it, and sometimes when I think it or say it, it's often in these spaces. But I'd be lying if I said every time I've used it in my mind or used it in language, and it's been positive. Like, and sometimes not even like on some satirical, ironic mess, like this nigga owed me $5. Or I know this nigga ain't just say this. Like sometimes it's more than we like to admit. Sometimes we're saying it because we're frustrated with a circumstance or person. We're frustrated, angry. We're frustrated or angry.
In the culture, we differentiate, like it's Black people and then it's niggas,
and as Chris Rock said, niggas got to go, right? Like, like that, and a lot of that research actually pointed to that, that skit that Chris Rock talked about, where there's a difference between the two. And I like to think that all of us have to wrestle with like our higher selves and lower selves. And in the case of Black people, right, it's just like our niggas and our nigga, right? Like the ways that we can demonstrate our lower selves within our culture and the ways that we can demonstrate our higher selves in our culture, right? But even, it just depends on your perspective of what the word nigga means, right? Like, so it definitely can have negative connotations when we use it. I know I've used it in negative connotations, but I also use it in positive ones too. So, but we've always been creative like that with our language. You know what I'm saying? And so when I hear it, I personally am not one of those people that felt like, what is it? They put the N-word in a coffin, metaphorically, and buried it. Part of me was like, nigga, please. Like, yes, right to a, part of me was like that. I understood because all of us are divided on this, because maybe I feel different if I wasn't called that every day by white people growing up in the 60s and 70s and 80s and before that, right? Because for me, I think that the word nigger, when used outside the community, it's similar to like hearing the shotgun click, right? Where danger is coming and somebody can exercise some power that society is given, right? Like if somebody says, calls me a nigger, like a white person calls me a nigger, that lets me know that you are not afraid to use the power that you have as a white person to denigrate me, to denigrate my family, and to be proud of this unearned gift of power that you got, right? But in the community, it's just like, I know we're mixed up about it. So while I don't use it a whole lot, I don't feel a way when people do.
But I think it's also tough.
Yeah.
I just want to jump in real quick. I think it's interesting, right? Because I hear when you say nigger, right, and pun intended, it's a trigger, right? And so like, and I think, I mean, even as Black people, we don't necessarily really say nigger, right? Like even when we talk about, and when we're talking, and not the most positive, like we're still niggas. I mean, I won't put some. I got close folks I can't put out there right now, but there's some folks around me in my family will say, "Oh, I can't deal with niggas. Niggas always got niggas." But at the same time, I mean, we'll turn around and, "Oh, Brendan, that's my nigga." You know what I'm saying? Like that's my nigga. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think right. Like, but I mean, reference to the ER, I don't know that I don't ever really say, "Oh, that's my nigger," right? Like that's just that even sounds weird to even come out. That's my nigger. Like it doesn't even reference right. So yeah, all my white folks who are my family who are watching, there's a difference in even the two words. That's why we don't even say.
You can't use either one of them though. I'm gonna just be clear.
Yeah. No.
So I have a question about that because when you think of a Southern white person, right? Like Southern Black people, they're not always pronouncing all the what do they call the consonant vowel clusters. So they're not going to say ER if they're going to be in. Sometimes they will. They'll be like, nigger, use the right water fountain. That will happen. But also be like, nigga, what are you doing? Trying to date my daughter. So they can still have the bad intentions even with the A, right? Like just because they don't have the ER. But at the same time, I wonder that about Black people too, right? Where we may not be like this nigger won't return my whatever. But when we say like, man, this nigga, was supposed to, pay me back 30 days ago, like how much of it is just like us sarcastically referring to each other in moments where we're not, being our best selves, and how much of it is really self-hate? I feel like it just flows way too much for me to like ever be like, it should never not be used, or it should, only be banned or always be used. It's just like, however people navigate it for themselves, like that's kind of where I'm at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think, internally, for myself, I think that's been my struggle with the word. And listen, I use it. It is a part of me. It's a part of my language. And absolutely, I use it positively, and I also use it negatively. Like you can't take niggas nowhere. Like, you feel me? It's real. And and I think what it is for me is it's the very real and ever-present struggle of the duality of positives of Black people and the negatives of Black people. And it's a word that we use in our community to describe us. And so like, when I use it, it's not necessarily like if I use it in a negative connotation, I don't use it to like downgrade my people. No, these are my people still. Like these are part of my people that we gonna have to figure out something with, like we had to figure out, we had to change something, they need some help, something like that. But at the same time, it's like, these are still my niggas. Like you still can't do nothing to my niggas. Like, I'm gonna deal with my niggas. And you can't take niggas nowhere, but you can't touch my niggas. Like, it's really that struggle there, man. It's really at both ends of it. And it's I think, for a long time, it absolutely was like a completely negative word for me. And it was something that it was more used in rebellion to, absolutely. The word, the hard ER, that pronunciation of the word or whatever, that iteration of the word, it was absolutely a rebellion of that. Like, no, we not niggers, we niggas. Like, you know, this is us taking pride in it or whatever. But actually, in doing the research, you know, reading the papers and looking more for myself, it's like, nah, this really is like, no, this for me, this word came from like Africa and referring to us as deities and royalty and of status and things like that. So it's like, no, absolutely, these are my niggas.
Yeah. And black people, I mean, well, my fault. Go ahead.
No, please, go ahead, Brian.
I'm saying black people, not to say we're the only people that do this, but we have, one of our cultural features is like having power to words, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and flipping, you know, wordplay and word meaning and word power is definitely something, is like a key cultural feature of ours. So, you know, prior to, you know, Western dominance, we had this meaning. Western dominance tried to pervert it and did pervert it. And without even always thinking about it, there was this intuitive desire to flip it, right? Mm-hmm. And now here we are rediscovering that, you know, we use these words in ways outside of, you know, denigrating ourselves, or not denigrating ourselves, but you know, being oppressed. So it all makes sense why we would be flipping it in a way that kind of returns it back to, you know, what it was before, while still being sensitive and responsive to what we're dealing with now, mm-hmm. right? And I have a question about that, like, because, so for example, right, the swastika before Nazi Germany did what they did was a symbol, a Buddhist symbol of like peace, right? Nothing but a positive, not my religious pathway, but like it's supposed to have like a positive, you know, meaning. Nazis did what they did. They took the symbol, you know, massacred Jewish people, oppressed Jewish people, other folks as well. Nazis lose power. If somebody were to walk around with a swastika now and say, oh, well, I'm just taking it back to the original meaning, is a person right or wrong to be offended or not be offended? Are they right or wrong to try to pick it back up after that crazy kind of history? And that's, and I feel like with us, you know what I'm saying? Like using the N-word, it's like a similar kind of conversation. Mm-hmm. And I can have it in my culture, right? Because like in my culture, I'm like, well, you know what? Like, I think you can, because of our predisposition to add power, you know, add power words, we could get creative and what it originally meant. But, you know, like everybody may not feel that way, especially when I think of that swastika kind of situation. But I was wondering what y'all thoughts were about that, because I've thought about that a couple times.
I mean, I love your question. It'd be interesting to see what the contrast of this conversation is going to be like versus the one on Thursday. And you guys might be watching this after Thursday. I don't know. But yeah. Right. But I think, you know, it's interesting you said it, because I think what I would highlight to me is the intentionality, right, behind. Like I remember talking to, in reference to what you said, I remember talking to, I was on a youth retreat, a Methodist youth retreat, and white guy who was talking to me was talking about the two different churches that were in his area, almost in a throwing balls distance from each other. And he referenced that his son would hang out with the church that had more Black people and people of color in it, a lot of times afterward service. So, you know, white church, Black church. And as he started talking, right, like he kind of got into this place where he started saying, you know, and, you know, I know, right, like that is the word, you know, and it's kind of difficult because he's hanging with them and they're all, you know, using the word. And he's like, you know, I mean, and you know, I have friends and I use the word, you know, only with them, right? So if I say nigga, you know, and I'm like, like, you know, and then, so I let him go the second time. He says it the second time, and I'm like, okay, like you know, I'm fueling right now, and I said it to say his intentions at the time was not pure, right? Like I knew, okay, you're saying this to see how many times you can get away with saying it, right, in front of a black man. Like, you just want to know, right? But here's the problem. I get upset, I go off on him, and I hit him. All of a sudden, you know, you got a preacher going to jail. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But I think what I'm saying about
the excuse, I used it around my friends.
Exactly.
I'm not your friend though.
Right. Exactly. But and so there are 2 points. So one, the intentionality, right? I think if a white man or somebody, even as a black person, but is just walking around like, oh, I'm just going to take this back to the original thing. You know, no, you're not. You know what I'm saying? No, you're not, right? Like you're absolutely intentionally trying to provoke some stuff here, right? Like that's not happening. But to me, if there's a conversation about it, right? And then a group of folks say, hey, you know, like this is an educational piece, right? And then after the educational piece, there's some movement or some strides, right? And there's a process. Then I think, right, like the intention is different, right? So I think one is about intention. That's my first point. But I'm gonna revert it back to a question to everybody as well. I also wonder, because him using the word and being white was one thing, but then I have some Spanish friends that absolutely use the word, and I don't care. I'd be like, you know, yeah, like you my nigga, right? Like, you know, like that's where they work. And I know we're in a hip hop society. To me, my question is, what makes that difference, right? Like, why are there some people in one race that you better not use it, and then there's some other people you're like, oh yeah, like that's my nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like, what makes that difference?
Now, honestly, if I had to take a guess at it or swing at it, shall I say, I honestly think it's because of our history. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was literally because it was black versus white. It wasn't black versus Hispanic or black versus Asian and American and stuff like that. It was literally black versus white. So,
well, let's switch that a little bit. It was really white versus everybody.
Facts. and so with that point given, you know what I'm saying? They were the oppressors. They were the enemies. You know what I'm saying? We were cool with everybody else. So y'all ain't trying to oppress us. Y'all ain't trying to beat us. Y'all ain't trying to take over us. So nah, we good with y'all. But the niggas that did this over here, yeah, we got a problem with y'all. You know what I'm saying? So I can't use it. But everybody else, yeah, because y'all didn't try to belittle us. You know what I'm saying? Y'all treat us equal just like y'all, you know what I'm saying? We're there. Them over here try to overpower us. They try to still trying to this day make us extinct. No, we don't rock with that. So, and I think that's why it's such a heavier thing, you know what I'm saying, with whites more than any other ethnicity in this country.
I just want to highlight really quickly that 3J definitely, when he was referencing white people the first time, he was like, these niggas over here.
That's real. I didn't even catch that. That's real. Yep. That's the thing with us. Like, we can talk about white people. If I see like a politic, you know how many times I call Trump the nigga in my mind? I call Trump the nigga in my mind.
Absolutely, so bro. Much. This nigga tripping.
Yeah, all the time. Talking about today. So, like, real? Like, yeah, no, that's real talk. But with white folks, that's not the case. No. White people ain't niggas too. You know, so
no, and actually, you know, to answer both questions, both yours, B, and 3J, I mean Ray's. Right. I think the Hispanic thing for me is like a lot of Hispanic people, especially from Latin America, like they have African roots. You know, and I mean the bloodlines have gotten crossed. Because of intermingling and all that stuff, but like a lot of them actually, like they came on the slave ships with us. We just went to America and they were in Latin America, you know. And I mean, of course, there were indigenous people there as well that, you know, intertwined in there before. A lot of them, like in kind of like I said earlier, it was literally like whites versus everybody. Like they were just dominant culture, pushing, you know, colonizing, doing all of this stuff, making everybody into what they were. And I think in B, to go back to your question, like as far as like the swastika thing, I think the like intent matters as well, but then also who is coming from. Like for in my frame, like we, like the people who created Me Gus, and injure, like we're taking that back. Like, yeah,
That's right.
it can't be just any random person going out and saying, I'm taking the swastika back. Nah, you can't do that. Because it's not yours. You feel me? Like, you can't just say, I'm taking it back to its original meaning, because you don't even, like, you're not even a part of that for real. Like, if Buddhists came out and they, like, it was a whole thing, like, no, this is our symbol. We're not going to allow what, you know, people to pervert it and make it something different. I'd be willing to listen to it. Now, if I see a German dude, like, popping out with a swastika and saying, like, I'm taking it back to the original meaning, fam, you gonna have to do a lot of explaining before hands get put on you, for real. Like, it ain't much room in between there. But I mean, you know, and I think really, this really, it even, you know, from a sense, it brings me back even to Christianity, man. And the perversion that has happened, like, you know, and even like within the Black community, some of the fight against Christianity, like, comes from it being perverted and used against us, you know, from us being stripped of some pages out of the Bible that would have liberated us, and given a Bible that, you know, is tainted, basically. It has redacted pages because they want to keep us in this control or whatever. And now it's like, as I look back and I understand that, absolutely, like Christianity isn't bad in itself. Like, you know, like religion as a whole, like even Islam, Muslim, like, it's not bad in itself. People take it and pervert it, and then we associate their perversion to that, you know, religion. That's not necessarily the right way to do it. And it's not proper, because not everybody that is in that religion takes that route. And so, like, even for me, it's like, even in my Christianity, it's a part of taking back the history of it. Like, let's be real. Like, there was Egyptians in the Bible. Like, you know, this didn't happen in, you know, in Germany or things like that. Like, no, this is a part of our history. This is Black history.
I'm about to say,
so what do, you know, why can't we be Christian?
I was about to say, Moses' wife was Ethiopian, right?
Yeah. Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yep. In fact, there was a book that kind of confirmed all things I felt about being a Christian, but like dove into it. It was called Blacks in the Bible by James Warden Jr. And that was the first thing he talked about, 3J, where he was like, you know, was Zipporah? Mm-hmm. Zipporah was, you know, like undoubtedly like Ethiopian and Black. Mm-hmm. Moses wasn't white. You know, but he may not be
not at all.
And back then it was about like nations, right? And that's the other thing, like with Zurara and there's another guy named Blumenbach who like created like racial categories, like he created the term Caucasian. And one of the rhymes I said, God made human, Blumenbach made Caucasians, right? Like they created these constructs. But back in the Bible, it was like nations. Like, why are you marrying this Ethiopian woman? Mm-hmm. I think his sister, right? His sister was like, why are you marrying, Moses' sister was like, why are you marrying this Ethiopian woman? Now in our nation, da-da-da-da. God was like, we don't do that. And God smote her with leprosy that turned her skin as white as snow, right? That's a powerful lesson about the intolerance of racism that Christianity actually has, when you're actually give in the true message of Christianity. Right. But to your point, the way it's been fed to us, the way that, you know, the N-word or nigga had been repurposed, right? Like now it's something that, you know, we feel like we can't own because, you know, of how it was fed to us, when really original intent and original offering is meant for every single human being walking the earth. And we had a huge hand in how that Bible came to be, in terms of it actually being a Bible and the people who are in it, right?
We're in it. Like our and it's like, even I mean, and even to the point, like, is and I think that just really, for me, has kind of strengthened my thought process about the word. And how I use it, why I use it. It's not just a rebellion. It's not to piss people off or make people mad. No, this is my culture. Christianity is my culture. Like like even Islam, Muslim, that's my culture. Like I'm not gonna degrade it, even though I'm not Muslim. I'm not gonna degrade it because it is my culture. And I don't participate in everything that is my culture, but I'm not gonna allow someone else to degrade it or to pervert it because of their experience with it. Right. Or the experience that they forced with it. I mean, because honestly, a lot of these things are forced experiences. Like people didn't have to, have these. The world didn't have to operate like this. People were looking for power,
right?
And so, I'm not going to allow that power perversion to pervert how I feel about my people, what we've created, what we've done, who we are, what we've become.
Right.
I think we even see similarities in that in our last conversation from the well when we talk about cancel culture, right? Because in some ways, I think that's where Giovanni, who was a guest on our last encounter, he said, nah, like he was very adamant. He was like, no, we need to do away with cancel culture. Why would we? He said, we don't need to cancel people. We need to educate people. And I believe in that heavily. I think cancel culture takes away, and 3J, you might have said this too the other day, cancel culture takes away the act of being able to be reconciled, right? Or being able to ask for forgiveness.
Redemption.
And redemption. It takes away the act of redemption. And I think, and so I'm saying that to say, even with the word nigga, there's an education piece. I think what we give power to, even in the Bible, a lot of times people, because of sociology, right, the way that they've been brought up, their background, their community, and the folks that have raised them have taught them a certain way. And I get into it even now with my own family sometimes, saying, no, listen, you got to step back. I understand the lens in which you look at the pages, right? I understand that lens. But we've evolved and we've grown. And a lot of people say, oh, you young people just want to change it to be your way. You just want to do things your way. You want to do. And I have to say also often, it's not that we want to do things our way. It's just we've learned, we're enlightened, we're more enlightened. And we've done a lot more research, right? And I even say in terms of the church, lowercase c, this is even where, and I don't want to bash church because we are the church and I want to take that ownership. But some of our churches even will allow people to live in the lies of what has been taught, as opposed to saying, right, because it's really about the mighty dollar that holds the weight, right? Like I don't want to lose my good tithing member, so I'm not even going to preach the truth. I'm just going to continue to teach what has already been taught. I think we got to start doing better and allowing our folks. I think this generation is really doing that to say, nah, like we know better. We don't even know better because it was told to us. But we got Google at our fingertips. And I'm not saying you can believe everything that Google tells you. I'm just saying we've advanced in our knowledge. And I think we owe ourselves that, to not just cancel or not just believe what it was, but to educate people in order for them to be enlightened and in order for them to be more aware.
Yeah, to those points, I was gonna say I thank God, but I don't. I probably should thank him every day about this. But I'm grateful every day that God has not canceled me, right? Because I could have been canceled day one. August 9th I was born. August 10th I could have been canceled, right? And in preparation for this, I watched this video, and it's actually tied to another point y'all were making. Of the rapper Immortal Technique talking about the use of the N-word. And when he was locked up, he had a white cellmate. And like the white cellmate said, I can't believe they stuck me with this nigger work, right? And he got really angry. And this is, according to him, this is like the height of his anger problem. But he made the choice to have the conversation around how white people, most white people were treated, were also oppressed and treated terribly in the founding of America and continuing into today. You know what I'm saying? Like many white people think that they got it going on because they're not us, but they're still not always getting the fair shake of stuff. And they have way more privileges than us in some regards, but like they still aren't necessarily on the same standing as the richest, the wealthiest, even those who are just plain wealthy and not like the richest. But all that to be said, he broke down the whole history of what it meant to be a redneck and what it was to be a hillbilly to the guy and said, like, you know what, like, you're really not as far off from us as possible. Now, Immortal Technique is a Peruvian rapper, right? But he was speaking to your point around like the overlap, right? Like, and why is it okay for some and not others? He's Peruvian. But he identifies as Afro-Peruvian because he has evidence of that being in his blood, right? Because the boat stopped at a lot of different places. So in here, and then just being, very exposed to, Latino culture, my wife's Puerto Rican, I understood why. Like, because growing up, they were everywhere we were, right? It's like, why was there always this overlap and connection? But like Boo said, there's that. And I got to even learn and see that they did something similar to nigger that they did in Spanish. So in these Spanish-speaking countries where they were colonizing and, enslaving indigenous people, enslaving Africans, like they weren't using negra or negro. They were using terms like negro or prieto, right? Both of these terms to signify where you are at the bottom of the ladder. But when you look at a lot of Spanish ethnicity writing and culture, these terms got flipped. Like, for example, I was watching the novella about Celia Cruz, who was like the Aretha Franklin of salsa music. And she kept on saying, ay negro, ay negro. It was a term of endearment, right? The same way we flip nigga, like they flip negro. In the same way that, prieto was used to degrade and demean, they use prieto in endearing terms, like loving, like family. So it's been interesting to see how different people respond to how European language was used to, put us down. They push back using the terms for endearment and flipping it back. So.
The Spanish sounds amazing, man.
Right.
I mean, listen, it needs to be fluent at this point.
I forgot to tell y'all, man, it's a large Hispanic culture in Rochester. Like, we got the Puerto Rican Fest. Like, it's literally like a whole festival in the city, and it goes crazy. Like, all the niggas be at the Puerto Rican Fest.
Oh, that's a fact. You don't speak a lick of Spanish, you're not Boricua at all. You are out there. You are out there still. That's a whole fact. Yep.
Yeah.
For real.
Yo, B, man, I appreciate you joining us, man. Our time is about to be up because I didn't do what I was supposed to do. But I appreciate you being on, joining us, man. We definitely gonna have you back on another one. And one of our official Thursday nights, man. We definitely gotta get you on one of them Thursday nights with us when your schedule allows for it and everything, man. But listen, man, before we hop off, just let everybody know how they can stay in contact with you, man, how they can get in contact with you. We'll definitely drop some links in the description of the video as well.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, y'all, for having me. This is very, it wasn't just cool just to share whatever I've learned, but also just to be edified and have my thinking pushed. These kind of communities aren't common, right? Like, sometimes I feel like the quote unquote conscious conversations I've had to be different from my church experience, right? But, the older I've gotten and the more I've explored, I'm finding more pockets where I can be doing both.
This one,
right? As it should be, exactly. So I'm very grateful for y'all doing this type of stuff. But, you can find me on Instagram. Bushido Garvey is my Instagram handle right now. Twitter, Classroom B. Or you can email me at bwhite@myclaw.com if you have any education needs, whether it be tutoring or professional development consultations or anything like that. And I'll be releasing a project called 30 Rock, not too far from now. Actually, one of the songs is called NWA. It stands for Niggas with Acronyms. every single line in the song spells out nigga, but it tells the story of Black people in America from the beginning to the end. right? So it's. I know that sounds a little weird, but like,
Nah, I need
if
to
you
hear
hear it, you
it. I
understand.
need to hear it.
I completely understand.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's it. I'm looking forward to checking out more episodes of the podcast. This is the intersection I need to be at. You know what I'm saying? So, thank you all very much. Feel very blessed right now.
Listen, man, Ray, again, man, I appreciate you for allowing me to bring my bro on and starting this platform, man, joining up. This is absolutely something that needs to be in more spaces, needs to happen more often, just the conversation, the thought processing, and the sharing of different experiences, man. So Ray, thank you. B, thank you. Well, people, appreciate y'all joining us. Make sure y'all check us out on Thursdays. Y'all know what time we do it.
All right, my niggas.
Word up. Oh, that's dope.